Welcome to the Forever Remembered podcast, Finding Help After Loss. A space created for families navigating stillbirth and infant loss, and for anyone searching for support, understanding, and hope after grief. This podcast is brought to you by the Foss Foundation, where we help families facing the unimaginable through financial assistance, education, and community. I'm your host, Aaron Silverman, co-founder and executive director of the Foss Foundation. Normally, there would be someone here next to me, but today, it's just me. This is our first podcast, so I wanted to take some time and talk about what is the purpose of the podcast, who's Ari, why, who is he, what is the Foss Foundation, and also to share some things I've learned along the way on my grieving process. So, right up front, everyone grieves differently. We all have different starting points. All of our losses are different. We all process things differently. So there's just so many different ways to grieve. There's no one answer fits all. We're not going to try to be that magic answer for everybody in every situation with this podcast. It can't be. What this podcast can do, and what my hope is that it will do, is that we're going to provide information from different professionals, different families. So we'll have professionals on that can provide some guidance on tips and advice and guidance on grieving, some way to think about things. And then we'll also have families that have had loss, and they'll talk about their loss and how they handled those losses. And from all of these different perspectives, my goal is for you to find something that helps you in your grieving process. And so for some of you, there could be more. For others, maybe it's not something directly that you hear, but like that advice gets a thought that gets you somewhere moving forward in your grieving process. So first and foremost, that's my goal with this podcast, is to help families on their grieving journey. Again, this podcast, it's going to be different professionals. So there could be times where we have 2 different episodes for one person. If there is, we will detail that in the show notes. But usually each episode will be independent of the other one, so it's not like you have to follow these in order and listen to them in order. I'd love it if you listen to all of them, but realistically, that's not something that usually happens, especially in podcast world. So look to see what those titles are of them in the show notes. One thing I'll caution though is you just never know where that one little nugget of information is going to come from that helps you. So as you, especially in this AI world, in my full-time job that I have, there's a lot of people summarizing videos and text and large text and just like boiling it down to a few key points. The problem is that you miss the nuance, and it's within that nuance where you can find information that helps you, that doesn't necessarily scream to somebody else who is summarizing something for you. So whether it's a podcast or you're reading a book, when you're dealing with something so tragic and life-altering, I highly recommend absorbing the information, not doing the Cliff Notes or the AI summaries or anything like that. Listen to our podcast, listen to other podcasts, read books. Don't go the abridged version. So that's my first piece of advice on that, is as you experience different forms of content to help you, just be open to it and pay attention, because you just never know what's going to be there to help you. I know that's helped me on my journey. I've read some books that weren't necessarily directed at me. One book in particular, it was from a female's perspective on how she dealt with losing her husband. But that book gave me some advice, that I took away some advice that helped me. There was another book that was actually a general book. It wasn't dealt to grief, but I was able to take things from that book that helped me as well. So that's the point of the podcast. I ramble a lot. Normally I won't ramble and go on tangents like I am now. There'll be a guest I'll be asking questions to, and we'll let them ramble. So, who is Ari? We're the Ari Foss Foundation. I already told you, Ari was my son. Actually, I don't remember if I said that. That's the most important thing about my involvement with the Ari Foss Foundation, co-founder, executive director. Sure, that's all fine and dandy, but Ari was my son. He was born at 10:06 p.m. July 30th, 2014. Unfortunately, he never took a breath, so that was also when he passed away. 10:06 July 30th, 2014. Becomes a unique thing when your child is stillborn. In 2 days, this podcast will air on Tuesday. In 2 days, it'll be what we call Ari's Day. It's a day where we celebrate Ari, but it's also the day he passed away. So it's a bittersweet day. It's one of the ways that we remember Ari. We'll get to some more about Ari's Day later, so we'll put a little pin in that one. So when I came up with the idea for the Ari Foss Foundation, it was because I wanted to keep Ari's memory alive. I wanted his life to have meant something. And so I talked with Laura, and she agreed, and we started the Ari Foss Foundation to help families who navigate stillbirth and neonatal loss. And that's how we ended up here with the podcast. Currently, our main source of support for families are family referrals from the hospitals that we partner with and work with. They refer families to us when they have a stillbirth or neonatal loss, and we help pay for cremations and funerals when they have that loss. We work with local hospitals here in Charleston, South Carolina, and through an extension, we have a hospital in Columbia that we work with, which is affiliated with one of the hospitals here in Charleston. Our eventual goal is to be in every hospital in South Carolina. At the release of this first podcast, we're a pretty small nonprofit, but we are growing. We've helped over 70 families now with cremation and funeral expenses. So that's something I'm very proud of that we've done. There's a lot of bittersweet in the whole story, so helping families is bittersweet. I'm glad that we're able to help the families, but at the same time, I'm saddened because it means they have lost the child that they wanted, and they are just starting their grieving process. So in a nutshell, that's what the Ari Foss Foundation is. I learned about a year ago that I want to do more with the Ari Foss Foundation than just that financial support with the cremation or burial. And we're now working on building more of a community where families who have experienced loss can come to. It's going to be a slow process to build, but this podcast is part of building that community. It's a community none of us want to belong to, and I wish no one ever had to join it, but it's unfortunately it happens. And so I want everyone to know, like, this is a safe place with the Ari Foss Foundation. And as you go through your journey, please reach out to us. You can join we have a private Facebook group that we're getting up and running. We do some events, and as we go, there will be more things to support families, especially here in the Charleston area and throughout South Carolina as we expand. I talked about how every loss is different. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit more. It's, whether you're 20, 30, 35, it's your first child you've lost, your third child, was this something genetic that was discovered and known? Was it something unexpected and sudden? We all are going through the process differently. The grieving process is unique to all of us. And I really want to point that out as the other is, you're with the other parent of the child, maybe it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, your spouse. They may not grieve the same as you. They're going to grieve differently. Laura and I, my wife, Ari's mom, had talked about her being on this initial podcast as well. I'm the one who does things with the Ari Foss Foundation, because this is really it's part of my grieving process. Like, helping other families when they're in this same situation that we were in helps me along. It's cathartic for me to help families and to share my experience and move forward. Whereas Laura, she prefers to not be public with her story. She is much more private than me. So I'm here by myself on the podcast, but we are on this journey together. And so while we grieve differently, we're on the journey together. And her and I were talking this morning, and we're talking about some things that we wish we would have done differently. And there's definitely some things I wish I would have done differently, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. But she said one thing that I did good, and then I'm going to flip it and say that she did good as well. We supported each other, and that's what mattered. We were there for each other. And so you need to lean on your partner, because they are going through the journey is the same. They might not be, again, they might not grieve in the same manner as you, but you're both on this trip together. And so if you are not with your child's other parent, then, find someone that you can lean on, because you do need someone that can be your support system, more so than others. So, if, your partner, it's a tough time, especially in those days leading up. Immediately after, in those few weeks after, things get tough, and your partner might not react the way that you would like sometimes. Just remember that they're going through the same traumatic thing you are. And now it's not the exact same. Laura and I had two completely different experiences during that same event. She was the mother. She was, Ari was growing inside her for 9 months. I was the dad watching from the outside. And so even though we're on the same journey, we had totally different experiences through that same event. And you just got to give your partner a lot of grace during it. I remember when we were in the hospital, Laura told me, she's like, because we had a lot of time. There's nothing to do in the hospital. She was just reading online and looking at things, and she was like, hey, a lot of couples divorce because of stillbirth. She's like, I don't want that to happen to us. And so we really leaned on each other and talked a lot and so again, we all grieve differently. Your spouse is going to grieve differently, but or your partner, use them though as your rock, and them yours. Now, one big caveat is when Laura and I were talking, she made another good point during those weeks after. She said, if it ever gets too much, let me know if I need to seek therapy. And we would talk and talk and talk, and just because of the way things went for us in our situation, there was a lot of unknowns, a lot of circular talk, and just like at one point I was like, Laura, you need therapy. And fortunately, she didn't get mad. She said, you're right. And then she ended up going to therapy. And I think she would say, I'm not going to say for sure, but I think she would say that therapy was massively important for her. It took me a while longer to start therapy. I fought it for a while. I was like, I don't need therapy. But someone I really trust one day pointed out that I was just not being pleasant all the time. And he was like, do you want, at the time my wife was pregnant with our second child, Haley, and asked, is this how you want to be when your daughter's born? And I was like, you know what? No, don't want to be this grumpy dude. And so that's when I started my therapy. I am a huge advocate of therapy. I know therapy is not cheap. A lot of people cannot afford it, but it is something I think that you should look at, and hopefully with the Ari Foss Foundation, we will one day have resources for that. At the time of recording this video, we don't, but hopefully one day in the future we can. But again, I do highly recommend therapy if depression is something that is lingering for you. There's a lot of options to lower that cost. There's telehealth on that. Some insurance companies will cover it. So kind of take a look to see what your options are. Maybe your employer has something for mental health as well, and there's something you can check with them. So that's my first tip: therapy. It's a wonderful thing. So it's been 12 years since we lost Ari. Well, it'll be 12 years in 2 days from this podcast being released. It's only been 12. At the same time, it's a long time. There's good days. Most of the days are good. There are some moments that are still kind of a bummer. They're not as... there's a saying that time heals all wounds, and that is just patently false from what I've learned, or what I've experienced so far. Maybe in another 12 or 24 years, I might give you a different answer, but for now, 12 years, I would say time scabs all wounds, numbs all wounds, because it's more... I wouldn't say pain anymore for me, but it's more of a numbing period. But I've also just embraced I'm going to grieve forever. Like, there is no returning to the way things were before. I've heard some people talk about returning to normal, to your pre-loss state. And I can emphatically say that was something that could never have happened for me. It was, what is my new normal? And so I had to find out, who is this guy, Aaron Silverman, going to be moving forward. Losing Ari fundamentally changed me. And so it is finding that new normal. When you are going through that grieving process, you're going to hopefully you'll find a new normal. Depending on your situation, maybe you can kind of reset more to where it was. Because again, everyone's situation is differently. Maybe for you, you're like, you know what? We had this loss. I understand it, and you're able to process it better than I was. And just because I wasn't able to process it too well, at least in my opinion, it was, altering for me. I've done a few podcasts and I've done some presentations. So I want to talk about when we first lost Ari. I was asked to give a presentation up at Clemson by Dr. Shepard there. She's a professor, because she wanted her nursing candidates in the nursing school. They said they would find it helpful to talk to a family or get it from a parent's perspective. And so she submitted some questions to me, and they were very thoughtful. So I appreciate her having us up there, and I look forward to going back and presenting again some questions. And so I'm going to answer some of those questions that came from out of that. And so one thing is, like, what would have I done differently those early days, especially in the hospital? You're probably not going to be listening to this podcast immediately after having your loss. but you could be listening to this podcast and help a friend. So this advice could be to a friend or a family member who one day is involved, with someone else who's having that loss. I wish we'd have more pictures of them in the hospital. The hospital offered a person to come in and take photographs, like if there's a local nonprofit that does it. And I said, no, I don't want them. We take our own pictures. And we did take our own pictures, but in retrospect, I wish we would have had some more. At the time, I thought it was extremely creepy to essentially stage my dead son and take pictures of him. Like it was, it seemed creepy, so I didn't want to do it. Now, it still, I think, seems a little weird, but I wish I would have done it. I wish I'd have the pictures. Could have deleted the pictures if we didn't want them. And so it's one thing I wish I would have done. In the immediate weeks after, I wish I would have been around people more. I unfortunately closed in on myself and Laura and we were living in a condo at the time, and we just stayed in the condo a lot. Someone, I don't remember whoever it was, thank you, started a meal train for us. I did not want it, didn't want any part of it. I didn't want people coming over. Laura, on the other hand, said, yes, I want that. So we did it. Happy wife, happy life. So we did it. And for a few weeks, some people brought food over and would sit with us for an hour or so while we had dinner. I love those. It allowed me to escape drowning in depression and grief. And having those short periods of reprieve were great. I didn't want them. Before they occurred, didn't want them. When people were coming over, I'd be like, I don't want them coming over, but Laura did, so I of course said yes. And then after they left, I was like, wow, that was nice. And I wouldn't want the next one to come over when that came because of the depression and the grief. But I appreciate them a lot. I wish I would have had more of them. We did some of this. I wish I would have done more. Getting out and walking. Just getting out in the sun, being outside, being around people would have been nice. Whether or not I'm talking with them or not, but just feeling is part of something. So instead of feeling like you're alone. And so that leads me to so in the beginning, those are my two main recommendations, or three main recommendations is think about long-term, sentimentally, what would you like? And I don't know what that is for you. Pictures, highly recommend them. See if the hospital has a volunteer that can come in and take some pictures. See if they have a nonprofit that they work with. Get footprints and handprints. I think a lock of hair, if that's your thing, that's definitely not mine. In retrospect, I wouldn't want that. But that could be something that you do. So there's various things that you could do, especially if you were to have a cremation. Maybe you want to get a piece of jewelry made. And so sometimes having a short-term decision, it's very hard when you're in that deep grief to think long-term. But sometimes that is something you got to do. Because I just don't want you to regret it. You can always, like I said, delete the pictures. And do something else. If you get some jewelry made and you don't like it, maybe you could go bury it somewhere meaningful to you. So you can always get rid of the stuff later in an appropriate manner for you, but you can't go back and get it. One of the other questions that I was asked is, what was the hardest when you first experienced the loss? The initial hard one was calling my parents and her parents to let them know. We were in the hospital late, and so they knew we went, and we were just going to call them and let them know once Laurie had been born, and that way they could come in the morning. And so, but I had to wake them up with not so good news. That was really tough. If you have people with you, I'd recommend letting them make the phone calls if they're able to make them for you. Those were tough. Just not a pleasant thing to do. So that weekend, I call it the weekend. If I recall correctly, it was a Wednesday maybe when we lost him, and then Friday we were in the hospital. Anyhow, I just call it the weekend because it was in the 2 next days. I don't remember what day of the week it was. I have to look at what the calendar says. But surprisingly, the first hard thing after those phone calls was going to get something to eat. Laura wanted some non-hospital food, and so I just went to a local restaurant, and I distinctly remember how vivid that day, like how vivid the colors outside were. It was like leaving the dark hospital. Now, it was a normal hospital, it wasn't overly dark, but because of what we were experiencing, it just felt a lot darker and gloomier than it really was. But going out so bright, and I realized, like, wow, my world has collapsed, and everybody is just moving along like nothing happened, because nothing did happen to them. But that's when I realized, like, whoa, we're alone in this. And so it's part of why I collapsed in on myself. And so, moving forward, because there's that initial thought of, like, we are alone in this. And that was, inaccurate. We had wonderful family that are around us, wonderful, wonderful friends as well that were there to support us. And so we weren't alone. I just felt alone. But that was tough. So if you can, I would recommend having someone go with you to go eat some food, to go get food. Another thing that was tough was going home to get Laura clothes. When I went to home, all of the stuff for Ari was out. And I knew Laura couldn't come home to that, so I broke down, but I threw everything into what we had for the nursery, got everything out of the living room, out of the kitchen, nothing. So that way when she came home, there was nothing for her to see. That was really, really tough. It was unexpected. I didn't even think about it until I walked in the door and everything hit me. So if you can, again, take someone with you. If you have, a family member or friend you trust, ask them to go put everything away, so that way it just doesn't hit you in the face when you go. And by far, and I mean by far, the hardest was leaving Ari in the hospital. We went in, expecting to have a healthy child. Things went sideways, and we left without him. Like, that was I thought it was rough up until then. That is the distinct moment that I broke. That's the moment that changed me, was leaving him there. And that was rough. So we left the hospital, I want to say by ourselves, just her and I. I don't remember clearly that. I just remember leaving him there. That was I remember that. So having family with you, or a good friend with you then, is advisable. And so I think there's a theme here throughout some of this advice that I've been saying is have your support system around you. No matter how alone you feel and how much it sucks, people who love you want to help you. Let them. All right, I'm going to wrap it up with one thing that I've learned through therapy that I think we all should benefit from, both and. We can both happy and sad at the same time. When those first few years, I was a roller coaster, especially after Haley was born, and then after Benjamin was born, our second son that we have now. The life was, every time I got happy, I'd feel guilty, and it would go down. It was up and down, until my therapist, Trish, she taught me both and. I can be both happy and sad at the same time. And so I am sad pretty much all the time still now, but I'm now happy as well. I can be happy and sad at the same time. I didn't know that before. She taught me that was the best thing I've learned through my grieving process, with both and. And so I highly recommend everyone try to embrace that. It's gonna suck when you lose your child. There's no ands, if, or buts about it. But there are still good moments. And when those happen, please, please, please embrace them. Feel the joy in those moments. You can also feel sad as well. During that, don't let your grief steal all your other joy. It took me years to learn that. I'm talking years. It took me at least 6 years. It's a long time to feel guilty and feeling any sense of joy. It sucked. And so, both and probably saved my life. It wasn't suicidal by any stretch of imagination, not implying that. But like, I don't know what kind of husband I would have been. I don't know what kind of father I'd be to Haley and Benjamin if I hadn't learned that. It changed me. Like, I don't know where I'd be without both and. So Trish, I mean, she's out there somewhere. I haven't spoken to her in a while. I've stopped doing therapy a while ago for various reasons. But I really, both and, I can't say anything else. I mean, I highly embrace that, both and. It's hard and it sucks when you're trying to learn it, but for me, it was everything. All right, well, this was the first episode of the podcast. I hope there was something there for you to hopefully learn from. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on social, reach out to us that way. I really hope that you stay involved with our podcast, and we have some pretty good guests lined up. Again, it's going to be some professionals and families, all sorts of different perspectives, and I hope everyone can find something that helps you on your grieving journey, because it's a long one. All right, take care, stay safe, and remember, you're not alone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Forever Remembered podcast. If today's conversation helped you, please share this episode with someone who you think may need it as well. You can learn more about the Ari Foss Foundation and our mission to support families after loss at arifossfoundation.org and our social media. Remember, your baby is forever remembered, and you are never alone. We will see you next time.